in any easy fashion. Sanctions remain in place, we remain in place, and so if he tries to reconstitute that capability, we're prepared to take it down again. Secondly, those inspectors were being precluded or prevented from carrying out their mission and their mandate. So to have inspectors on the ground who can't really carry out their mission really is no inspectors at all.
Well, General, how does it work? The Secretary just said you have to take it down again, meaning, I suppose, more bombing. Can we keep forces there on station just in the same quantity that we have now? How much would that cost? How would that work?
Well, as you're aware, Sam, we have retained a very substantial force in the Gulf now for over 20 years. The force that we have there now has been there for quite some time, and our plan is to retain that to ensure that Saddam does not threaten the region, which is vitally important to this nation.
You built them up in November, the first time around in this present cycle. You built them up again this past week. Are you telling us that they will all stay in place?
Well, let me say, first of all, the strike that was carried out substantially by the force that is in the region and that we have kept in the region. We didn't have to build up almost anything. That is the same force that will stay there now and is prepared to do something equivalent. And also, we maintain a very large force as a crisis response force here in the United States, prepared to respond on very short order if needed.
Secretary Carn, you said, I believe yesterday, that it was not one of the aims of our attack to destabilize the Iraqi regime. If so, why did we drop those leaflets, in effect, fomenting rebellion and dissension in the Iraqi army? And why did we attack the Republican Guards, which I gather are significant because they're a prop of the regime?
Well, first of all, the leaflets that were dropped told those soldiers in the southern part of Iraq to stay put and not to move toward Kuwait to attack in any way. So they would say, if you stay stationary, you will not be hit. If you move, you run that risk of being hit. Secondly, with respect to the Republican Guards, we've always indicated these are the people who maintain control of its weapons of mass destruction program. They maintain the security of it. They also maintain the transportation of it. And we made it very clear we were going to go after those units. It was not our objective to, quote, destabilize Saddam. To the extent that we hit these particular forces, it could have the consequence of doing that, but that was not our major goal. Major goal was to hit those units that were in charge of his weapons of mass destruction program.
Among the most dramatic photos were the photos of the barracks themselves being blown apart. Were those barracks empty?
We don't know at this point. One of the reasons why we were prepared to act on very short notice was to make sure that Saddam was not able to disperse his forces. He had some notice by virtue of some of the television coverage, but if they were there, they were hit, and we hit their facilities. So either their facilities where they work or their facilities where they sleep, we had a chance of hitting them.
General, it was said at the Pentagon that we intended to avoid hitting plants, which, if hit, might emit a plume of poison gas. And we can understand the humanitarian impulse behind that, but isn't that flatly at odds with our desire to end the capacity for weapons of mass destruction?
What we attempted to do in this particular case was minimize the damage, what we call collateral damage, to the Iraqi people. We were going after facilities that were related to his weapons of mass destruction, his delivery means, etc. Collateral damage, dual-use facilities, which you could use, include hospitals, fertilizer plants, legitimate businesses that we didn't have any intelligence that would indicate they were being used for anything other than their intended purpose. And we avoided those types of facilities. In every case where we suspected that maybe chemicals could possibly be stored, we did an analysis to see what the potential would be for damage to the Iraqi people if we were to strike it. Of course, if we believe Saddam, he did not have any weapons of mass destruction.
The debate in the House was being carried on, and the vote was taken during this operation. One Democratic congressman even said from the floor that the blood of Americans would be on the hands of the House if anything happened. I want to ask both of you, did the fact that the House was debating impeachment against the president in any way, shape, or form affect your operation adversely?
The short answer is no. The people who were carrying out this operation, the brave men and women who were carrying out this operation, were focused on one thing, and that was to carry out their mission.
General?
The press reporting coming out of the Gulf, I think, best answers that sound. The morale was very high. They were focused on their mission, not only in the Gulf, but all the support groups here in the United States, throughout the world, that were a part of this operation, supporting in one way or the other. They were focused on the mission at hand.
Secretary Cohen, you were on the Judiciary Committee when Richard Nixon was impeached by the committee, articles of impeachment passed by the committee. You've just seen it happen again. What should happen next?
Well, it's the constitutional process is going forward. That's something for the Senate to consider and to evaluate now.
And in the calls for the president to resign, as commander-in-chief, do you see, would that be a useful thing?
I think President Clinton is still capable of leadership. He's demonstrated that the past several weeks under very extraordinary circumstances. He continues to lead.
Thank you very much, Secretary Cohen, General Shelton. Coming next, Congressman J.C. Watts of Oklahoma, part of the Republican leadership, and later, the outlook of the impeachment trial in the Senate with former Senate Majority Leader Howard Baker and Democratic Senator John Breaux.
From ABC News, This Week with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts.
Conference in the House of Representatives. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Well, what happened here? Bob Livingston stepped down. Was that a good thing? Should he have resigned?
Well, Sam, I wish he would not have. I understood why he did it, but I wish he wouldn't have done it. I think we are getting on a very slippery slope and in the direction that I see us moving. This tit for tat, you get one of ours, we're going to get one of yours. I think we're getting on a very slippery slope. I think it's difficult for us to say that you can take a snapshot of a person's life, 15, 20 years ago, and once they become speaker or they run for mayor or run for governor or public office, that you try and project that that's who they are. I think that's pretty dangerous in my opinion.
Well, Mr. Livingston, of course, called for the president to resign. He said he was setting an example. What you've just said, though, matches exactly what the White House officials say. They wanted Bob Livingston to reconsider, and clearly their strategy was, we don't want him to resign, and neither should Bill Clinton.
Well, and Bob Livingston, I think Bob Livingston looked in the mirror and looked at himself, took a deep breath, and I think he probably asked himself several questions. One, am I willing to put my family through this? Is this for the good of the country? Is it for the good of my party? I think he asked himself a lot of tough questions. And Bob Livingston is a decent man, and I think he chose to resign. And I think the president, as Mr. Livingston said, the president has to do the same thing.
Well, that seems to me, forgive me, Congressman, we had variance with your first answer about we should move on and not let these things...
I agree, Sam. We do need to move on. We can't get into this tit for tat. You get one of ours, we're going to get one of yours. But that's how many operate in this city, and I think that's unfortunate. It's reality, but it's unfortunate. And because of what happened and because Bob Livingston is a friend, I think he's a decent man. I think he's a good man. I wish he wouldn't have, but the decency within him said, I think I need to do this for my family and for my country.
Congressman Watts, you say, get one of yours, get one of ours. There is a strong feeling among the Democrats that that's what the Republicans were after all along with President Clinton, was to get him. And that as people were saying, impeachment is simply moving this along to the Senate. It's not doing anything beyond the constitutional process, just moving along. That the same people are saying, all right, now he's been impeached, he should resign. And that there's a certain disingenuousness there that is the idea to get him out.
Well, Cokie, my grandmother used to say, you can't get in a barroom brawl if you don't go to the bar. Republicans did not lie under oath. Republicans did not obstruct justice. Those are the issues that's before us. I think what the Republicans believe and several Democrats is that the president had an opportunity under oath to answer some questions that Kenneth Starr, his investigation was asking. He did not answer those questions truthfully under oath. Therefore, the Constitution says there's a process that encourages us to use that process to deal with those issues. That's what we did. Should we have turned our face, turned our head to perjury or obstruction of justice, witness tampering? If we would have turned our head, then what would have happened? They would have said, well, those Republicans, they're sleeping at the wheel and they're not doing their job. But we've got a process, and now that process is going to the Senate, and we'll see what happens on the Senate side.
After the impeachment vote yesterday, the president had a little pep rally at the White House with a lot of the Democrats who voted with him. Do you think, what was your reaction to that rally?
Well, that's that's the way the process works. I had no control over the rally. I thought it was very interesting that many of the people that attended the rally, that in the censure resolution that was offered, they used some pretty strong adjectives in describing the president, and it was pretty interesting after the censure resolution, and even what some of the members of Congress on the Democrat side, what they said during the impeachment debate, and then to turn around and go down and do a pep rally, as you said, was somewhat interesting. But again, I have no control of that they made that decision to do that on their own.
At the pep rally, the president said, "I have taken responsibility for the mistakes I made in my personal life." Is it not the case that after 11 months the ball hasn't moved at all, that the president still says he did nothing wrong in his public capacity?
Well, I think that's somewhat of a contradiction, George. But again, I think the president, as each one of us will have to do from time to time in our lives, take a look in the mirror, and if you can say in your heart of hearts, I did nothing wrong, I did not perjure myself, I did not obstruct justice, then the president shouldn't resign. And I think that's where we are. Bob Livingston said, yes, I need to resign. I need to step aside. The president said no. So we'll see what happens.
And when Livingston did that, the Republicans fell like an infant on a security blanket, I might say, on Mr. Hastert, saying, this is the man we want. Now, he's described as a avuncular, grandfatherly, whatever else he is. He's the un-Gingrich, isn't he? I mean, he's not ideological, not one of these pyrotechnical figures. Is that what the Republican Party wants? Have they sort of learned a lesson that they can't stand a high-octane speaker?
Well, Dennis Hastert had quite a bit of support for Majority Leader just 3 weeks ago during our leadership elections. He had some support then, and I think...
I'm asking you what that support indicates about the mood of the Republicans.
Oh, I think it indicates that we're all looking for a speaker that can help us move legislation, help us get taxes cut, help us do the things in education and the military and health care and other areas that we want to address. We're looking for somebody that can do that. I think you have to know who you are and what you stand for as Speaker, and I think you should know that as a member of Congress if you're not the Speaker. But I think there's a reality that says you've got to get legislation passed, and we've seen... we thought Bob Livingston was the guy. I still think Bob Livingston
was Mr. Hastert a good legislative mechanic, a good man to make the trains run on time in the House? Or, I mean, lots of people could do that, surely. What is it that recommends him to Republicans? Well,
I think he has shown that he's that he is a good technician. He is a good mechanic. I think he's shown that he can work with conservatives, moderates. I think that's important with the 6-vote majority. He's shown a lot of leadership skills that I think they're very important for not just Republicans, but I think the House of Representatives at this critical time in our nation's history.
I mean, I think that's partly what George is asking. I mean, you've seen it more as a time of conciliation rather than confrontation with the Democrats?
Well, I think there are times that you've got to draw the line in the sand. I don't think Dennis Hastert will be afraid to do that. But, Dennis Hastert is a good man. He's a kind man, but I hope no one takes his kindness as a weakness. Dennis understands moving legislation. He understands the importance of sitting down with 223 different egos and personalities, or 434 egos and personalities on a daily basis, and trying to move the right models in education, the right models in taxes, the right models in health care. And I think he can do that very effectively. But I do think, because of what happened in the leadership races, the support that he had, I think he was probably somewhat of a natural choice.
Congressman Watts, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for
I
having
hope
me
you'll
on.
come again.
Look forward to it.
Good to see you. Coming up next, the Senate impeachment trial. We'll talk with former Senate Majority Leader Howard Baker and Democratic Senator John Breaux of Louisiana.
How far will you go so that people can fly? How deep into darkness to bring a city to life? What depths will you dare to keep the world running smoothly? How far far will the people of Texaco go to provide the energy the world needs?
Going down.
How deep is the ocean? Texaco, a world of energy.
A place of visionaries. A place of dynamos. A place where if you want, you really can change the world. A place of doers and darers and shapers. Who's next? The New York Stock Exchange. The world puts its stock in us.
Introducing the remarkably innovative GE Profile Performance range with a revolutionary bridge that connects burners so you can cook any size dish. And its true temp oven is the most accurate in America, so you can also bake and broil like a gourmet. It's so versatile, you could get carried away.
Dad, I usually just have cereal for breakfast.
Go, go, get it!
The incredible Profile Performance range, only from GE.
The Senate Majority Leader, Republican leader, and Senator John Breaux of Louisiana, who is still in the Senate. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning.
Good to see you. I said coming through the commercial, coming up next, the Senate trial. Well, not so fast. Let's start right there. Should there be a Senate trial? Will there be a Senate trial, Senator Breaux?
Well, I think the people are saying to all of us, my people in Louisiana are saying enough, enough, enough. Stop the madness. I mean, stop the politics of anger, which is now turned into the politics of hate. I don't know that a trial would give us any additional information that we don't already know about what happened. I mean, does the country really need to know more about what Monica Lewinsky did and when she did it and how she did it? I think not. I mean, the evidence is, I think, clear. We do not have to have a trial. The Constitution says that the Senate shall be the sole trier of an impeachment resolution. It gives us the power to do it, but it doesn't demand that we have to.
Isn't that a cop-out?
That's not a cop-out. What I'm saying is that there are other remedies other than a trial in the Senate. The president's actions were wrong. They ought to be punished. There are consequences for his actions. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the Senate has to spend 3, 4, or 5 months in a trial and stop everything else that we should be dealing with.
Senator Baker.
No, I think there's got to be a trial. I think the process has to work. I've said that since the matter first came up. I think if we start improvising, we're going to get in deep trouble. And I think it would be a terrible affront to the House of Representatives, who, after all, have rolled the dice for their own political futures and shown a great deal of courage, I think, if the Senate did not solemnly, carefully, and constitutionally approach the trial of these issues that will be presented to them.
Well, Senator Breaux, there's a person in the Senate who certainly agrees with Senator Baker, and that is your senior member, Senator Byrd. Any way that you can avoid a trial?
Well, I would like to have Howard Baker back in the Senate. I think he could do a real service to this country. There will be certainly people who disagree and think that we have to drag the country through a trial. I don't think the American people want it. I don't think it's required by the Constitution. The evidence is very clear. There are procedures which are constitutional that can be taken to end this thing quickly and fairly, and that doesn't excuse the president. That doesn't mean he gets off scot-free. There should be penalties for what he did.
Could I say a word about that just for a second? John Breaux and I are good friends, and I expected more from him than for him to invite me back to the Senate. But, you know, we've never impeached a president. We've only had one trial. That was Andrew Johnson. And we're doing much more here than simply deciding whether President Clinton should remain in office. We are, in fact, establishing the precedent for impeachment for the future. I think we'd neglect our opportunity and our responsibility if we didn't go forward with this and do it in a careful and methodical way.
Senator Breaux, you say that people want it over with. Another way to get it over with would be for the president to resign. Now, your friend Bob Livingston yesterday did that and said that he was setting an example. The censure resolution that was written by the Democrats in the Congress said that the president had dishonored the office, went through a series of things that were pretty awful. Should he go?
Well, I think the only resignation is that we should resign ourselves to ending this politics of hate and the politics of anger. I do not think he should. I mean, this is a decision that he has to make, and if he makes it, so be it. I don't think he should. I don't think Bob Livingston should have resigned either. We lost a good public servant who could have made a major contribution. I feel very badly about what has happened. But I do not think that a trial will give us any additional evidence that we don't already know. The purpose of a trial is to put forth evidence that you need to know about. We know the evidence already. A trial is not going to produce any new evidence whatsoever.
But if you know the evidence, then don't you have to decide whether it It means he should be convicted or acquitted.
I exactly would agree with that, Sam, and I think that an appropriate and proper penalty is a strong censure resolution condemning his actions, making him acknowledge it, making him sign it, but I don't think it's high crimes and misdemeanors within the meaning of the Constitution.
For starters, if you agree with that, do you agree with the draft of a censure motion that came from the Democratic members of the House that said he has dishonored the office of the presidency?
I would agree with that, George. I also would agree with the recommendations of the former majority leaders of the Republican Party in the Senate, Bob Dole, who has a censure recommendation, who also is supported by the former Republican President, Gerald Ford. We have to do this in a bipartisan fashion and quit killing each other.
But yesterday in the Rose Garden, or wherever he was, the president said, I've taken responsibility for what I did wrong in my personal life. Now, he clearly indicates he did nothing wrong in his official capacity. Do you agree with that?
I don't think he was acting as President of the United States when he did whatever happened between he and Monica Lewinsky. It was a personal thing that happened, unfortunate, wrong, and terrible, and has consequences.
Senator Baker, do you believe it was a personal thing that he did when he did whatever he did in the grand jury and the civil deposition?
No, I think the Monica Lewinsky matter is personal, but I think his testimony under oath to a grand jury, or in a civil deposition for that matter, in my view, was certainly not personal. And, you know, after all, swearing under oath and swearing truthfully is the very cornerstone of American jurisprudence.
I would agree with that, George, but I don't think that rises to high crimes and misdemeanors or treason and bribery.
But it does put you at odds with the president if you're agreeing with Senator Baker. Doesn't this indicate the problems you're going to have once you come to, if you come to, writing a censure resolution?
Well, I think, George, the thing we have to keep in mind is we should be looking for ways to punish the president, not punish the country. I think a 3-, 4-, or 5-month trial punishes and prevents the Congress from doing what we should be doing.
Let me interrupt you right there, because I've heard you say this before. The country's at peace, Cold War's over, the economy's throwing off wealth like a skyrocket. If we can't go through an impeachment process now, isn't it time to repeal the impeachment provision of the Constitution as inherently too dangerous for a modern world?
George, I'm chairman of the Medicare Commission. Do you think there is any chance that we're going to have an opportunity in the first few months of next year to solve Medicare, Social Security, health care, and we have a 5-month trial going on? The answer is no.
I think we can. I really do. And reading in the Andrew Johnson impeachment case, they double-tracked and they conducted legislative business all the time. And if there's any proof at all necessary, in addition to what we already have, that the president can continue to function with an impeachment proceeding, you only have to look at the attack in Iraq. I think the government can go forward. I think we can have the constitutional impeachment process. I think we can establish precedent. The Senate can find him guilty or innocent of the crimes that are necessary to impeach and remove, or find him innocent. And I'll be perfectly happy either way they go, but I would not be happy if the system doesn't work.
Any chance the Senate will find him guilty? The Senate, 2/3 of the Senate will
I think that's another point that has to be taken into consideration. I don't think anyone in Washington thinks that there's any new evidence that's going to bring about 67 United States senators to vote to convict and throw him out of office. So we go through a 3-5-month trial, knowing that the results are going to be that he's not going to be convicted, and then you may not even have a censure resolution.
Senator, after the election recently, very few people thought it would even come to the point where the House would impeach. Don't you have to recalculate the odds every time you take another step? Well, and aren't the odds now a little bit shakier for the president and the Senate than they were before last Saturday?
Well, you never can predict what the Senate would do or what the House has done. No one would have predicted it. I agree with that. But I tell you, we're destroying ourselves. We're tearing each other apart. We're losing good people because of this whole process, and we're punishing the Congress more than we're punishing the president.
Senator Baker, Senator Breaux has a point. I mean, there are 55 Republicans in the Senate. It takes 67 to convict. They'd have to have a lot of Democrats, even if the Republicans just were a solid mass, which they might not be. Can you conceive of that happening?
Sure. I don't predict that will happen, but that's exactly why you need to have the trial. We don't know what the facts are. There may be other facts. I don't know that, but I don't know there aren't. And besides that, I think finally the country would be torn apart far more if we destroy the constitutional process than if we go forward with this unpleasant situation.
If you go forward and say 53 senators vote to impeach and it fails, and that isn't that a satisfactory end to this? Went to trial, nothing happens, so what?
Well, so what, George, is the fact that we've spent 5 months tearing this institution.
Where'd you get the 5 months figure?
Well, say 3 months. Whether it's 3 months, 4 months, or 5 months, it's too long.
Isn't the time period to be determined pretty much by the White House? If they decide to send up witnesses and contest the facts, that's going to be the time-consuming thing.
No one would believe that you can have a trial of this magnitude and do it in 2 or 3 days.
But
there are legitimate motions that can be offered by both sides, and maybe decisions by the Supreme Court. It could be drug out a long time.
I recur to my previous question. Aren't you really saying that in the modern world with the modern government, impeachment is inherently unworkable? Are you saying we can never impeach someone?
Absolutely not. I'm saying that the facts in this case, George, are clearly known already.
So
there's nothing new that's going to be shown by
That'll
a
make
trial.
it brief.
Senator Baker, I'd like for you to just take a little rumination of the thought of the Senate sitting silently while this is going on. Can you imagine your former colleagues not speaking?
It boggles the mind.
Well, Senator Breaux, the president is fortunate, I think, to have an advocate as fierce as you are, as good as you are, on his side. Thank you for coming. And Senator Baker, I think a lot of people in this town and elsewhere agree with Senator Breaux. I could never figure out why he left the Senate in the first place.
We need him back.
Thank you both for being on our program today. Both of you, please come back. Next, our weekly roundtable with ABC News analyst Bill Kristol and George Stephanopoulos in a moment.
At Invesco, we know that before we invest your money with a company, we look deep into that company. We know with whom they do business, where they do business, and what kind of business they do. And we even learn a thing or two about who they really are. Invesco, a family of no-load funds. Over 65 years of experience, a global perspective. You should know what Invesco knows.
Every 60 seconds, someone suffers from a stroke in the United States.
Suddenly, my left arm was numb, and I went to the emergency room in the hospital.
A stroke is a blood clot in your brain. What the pharmaceutical companies are doing is giving hope to people who suffer from strokes and their families.
Well, I'm perfectly normal now, and I'm better than before.
We hope we've added a whole new quality of life to patients who have suffered from stroke.
In the global economy, companies can't afford to shut down. So America's largest generator of electricity never rests. Southern Company uses its resources to track the availability of oil, gas, and electricity 24 hours a day. We keep our customers up and running while saving them millions. So at the end of the day, they know we're still at work, keeping the power on. We are Southern Company, energy to serve your world.
This week with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts will continue in a moment after this from our ABC stations.
Fred Couples, Hale Irwin, Suri Park. It's tour versus tour versus tour. The Wendy's 3-Tour Challenge, today at 1:30 on ABC.
Peter Lynch from Fidelity.
Don Rickles, fishing? Are you thinking about retiring?
What? I touch a rod and reel and you're having a farewell banquet.
It's never too early to plan.
You know, I saved a lot, but I don't want to outlive it.
You need to plan your retirement income even before you've retired.
Tell that guy, too. His bait looks fresher than him.
If you're about to retire or already have, call Fidelity for your free retirement income planning guide.
When I do retire, forget fishing. Vulcanized rubber makes me itch.
10-10-220 gives you the freedom to call anywhere in the U.S. and Canada for only 99 cents for all calls up to 20 minutes. Now 10-10-220 offers savings around the world. Call most of Europe and it's just $1.99 for all calls up to 10 minutes and only 19 cents a minute after that. All day, every day. Call Mexico and it's only $2.99 for up to 10 minutes and just 34 cents a minute after that. 10-10-220. Great savings all over the world.
Evans on call with a new injection for knee pain, Monday at 5 on Eyewitness News.
The president impeached 2 Republican speakers, or a speaker and a speaker designate, gone in the space of 7 weeks. This is a week that we've not seen the likes of ever. George Stephanopoulos, somewhere along this line, could something have happened to not get to this point?
Many places along the line, and that's really the tragedy. So many missed opportunities. You know, yesterday, December 19th, was exactly a year to the day of when Monica Lewinsky was subpoenaed in the Paula Jones case. And if you look from that day on, if at any point the president had come forward and told the truth, if at any point the Republicans in the Congress had said, is this really the stuff of impeachment, it could have been stopped, at least a dozen points.
Well, at some point, perhaps, maybe after the civil deposition, but it was the president who gave answers under oath that seemed to be at variance with the facts. And his fiercest defenders, to use that word again, now don't argue they didn't do it. Their argument is it would tear the country apart to have a Senate trial. How? I mean, NASDAQ went up to its highest point on Friday, 42 points.
Sam,
the Dow went up.
That's
The
not their
country is
only
not
argument.
being
Their
torn
argument,
apart.
it's not only about the country, it is about the Constitution. I disagree with those who say we shouldn't go to trial. I think it's you can go to the trial and still find a way constitutionally to end it with a majority vote.
Well, you were making that argument that to say that we can't, that it's going to disrupt the country says we can't ever impeach.
That's right. It makes the presidency, it makes Washington, it makes people in this town feel good to think that they're indispensable and that people will quit raising their children and creating wealth if we're distracted here, but the country will tick right along. The oddest theme of the week was the Democrats' claim that this is a coup. Now, it's a very funny coup that would replace a wounded and discredited president with a much stronger Democratic incumbent to run in the year 2000. I don't get it.
Well, that, I must say, Bill Kristol, is something that I kept hearing from Democrats and Republicans on the Hill. You know, the dirty little secret is that the Democrats want Clinton to go and the Republicans want him to stay. That was certainly true earlier this year. I was surprised to hear people saying that to me this week, but that is what I was hearing.
Well, I think the very first week of the scandal, in late January, a senior Republican senator said to me, and I was saying I thought Clinton should leave office, be careful. We want a weakened Clinton in office. We'll do better in the November elections in 1998. Well,
that didn't happen.
That turned out not to be true. I really hate that kind of pseudo-political cleverness. I do think the thing I admire about what the Republicans did this week is they did not follow the public opinion polls. They didn't act in their immediate political self-interest. What they did was probably unpopular. They may pay a price for it in 2000. And you're right, a weakened Clinton is better for them than a President Gore, and they did what they thought was right.
Go ahead.
What is to admire about the fact that every step of the way since August, they took a partisan route? In the vote for the inquiry, in the decision not to give a central resolution, in the insistence that they had to vote on the weekend when we were bombing, as opposed to waiting. Why couldn't this vote be tomorrow?
Well,
Every step
the
of the way
Democrats
was
took
partisan.
the same partisan view opposite to that, George. But what does the president have to fear from a Senate trial? He would have to have at least, if the Republicans held solid, 12 Democrats.
You know, Sam,
let me just finish. 12 Democrats vote against him. So if it's going to be a partisan witch hunt, as they claim in the House, he has nothing to fear in a Senate trial unless the evidence and the facts persuade Democrats that he ought to be removed from office.
Sam, some people advising the president actually would prefer a trial right now because they're so sure he would be acquitted, and that's going to be some tension between the president and the Senate Democrats.
But that's great, George. That's the constitutional process, and I agree with Senator Baker. If he is acquitted in the Senate after an orderly procedure, then that's fine. We move on.
But you know, you talk about
have the vote.
You talk about the principled stance of the Republicans to go forward. But now we get to a Senate trial. Now, presumably, this trial calls witnesses: Monica Lewinsky, Linda Tripp, Betty Curry, Vernon Jordan. The spectacle will be quite something. Does this help the Republican Party down the line when you have all of America saying, stop, enough, you know?
It may hurt them. It may hurt them, but it really will not be and need not be a spectacle. The Chief Justice will preside. The manager, I talked with one of the staffers on the House Judiciary Committee. They think they would need to call 4 or 5 witnesses. Lewinsky, Jordan, Curry, maybe 1 or 2 more. If everyone thinks the American people just can't take Monica Lewinsky's testimony, that we will be so shocked we can't see it in open session, they can do it in closed session. It is really, I think, a derogation of the Constitution and in some ways of the American people, this notion that they can't go through a Senate trial. The senators will sit silently. The Chief Justice will preside.
I'm not saying they can't go through it. I'm saying they don't want to go through it.
Well, we didn't want to go through Pearl Harbor either. Excuse me, but...
Please, Sam.
What I'm saying is the American people will rise to the occasion. Those poor little people trembling out there must be protected from a Senate trial?
It's not clear that they're going to have to call all these witnesses because among the stories just not being missed in the turmoil is the degree to which everyone has accepted the Starr report. No, the Democrats really didn't attack the broad conclusions of the Starr report, so there's great agreement as to what the evidence is, how you construe it, whether it rises to impeachable offense, but the Starr report is in, the investigatory part of this is over.
Yeah, the president might not even have to call witnesses. He might not have to mount much of a defense. Look at the Espy trial, the Agriculture Secretary. His lawyers didn't put up a defense, and they went straight to a verdict, and he was acquitted on all counts.
Well, the more trouble the president gets in, the worse it seems to be for Republican leaders. Bob Livingston, the speaker designate, first we have an election where Bill Clinton's in trouble and Newt Gingrich has to go. That was a little confusing. And now we have the Republican leader, Bob Livingston, in an incredibly dramatic moment in the House of Representatives yesterday, announcing that he wouldn't run. I will tell you, I was in the chamber at the time, and he had started to go down a road that was clear that he was calling for the president to resign, and the Democrats started hissing, and then started saying, no, 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 and John Conyers got up and tried to calm them down, and then he made that stunning announcement about his own resignation. What happens next?
Well, everyone deplores the politics of personal destruction and of hatred, as they should. But who exactly is engaging in the politics of personal destruction? It was a left-wing, pro-Clinton online magazine that outed Henry Hyde. It is a left-wing, pro-Clinton pornographer who outs Bob Livingston.
Wait a minute. That's not fair.
It is absolutely fair.
I don't think...
Larry Flint's intention in doing this was to defend the
Larry
president.
Flint's intention is to make money.
Right.
That's all he's doing.
We can't tie Bill Clinton to Larry Flint. I mean,
I'm not
that is
tying
too
Bill
much.
Clinton to Larry Flint. I'm making an accurate statement. But let me just finish the point. There's a lot of bipartisan, the right wing's doing this, the left wing's doing this. The Christian Coalition isn't talking about anyone's personal sexual life. Gary Bauer's not having press conferences and saying X is a homosexual. It is not that both sides are engaged in exposing people. The politics of personal destruction is being practiced by people on the left, and
we
it
are
needs to
in
be
the
deplored.
11th year of the politics of personal destruction, and those of us are waiting for those who deplore it to send a note of apology. I'll provide the address to Clarence Thomas, John Tower, Robert Bork. Late converts are late but timely.
As a Democrat, I will say I think the Democrats should rue the day when they made one simple act, the day they subpoenaed Robert Bork's videos.
Exactly. Well, coming back to this year, I'm fond of quoting my friend Joe Klein, who wrote the book Primary Colors, under the name Anonymous at first. He likens Bill Clinton to the central character in The Great Gatsby. He says, he walks along and behind him he leaves wrecked lives, ruined lives, not just his enemies, but his friends. And if you think about the people, both his enemies and friends, speakers and Webb Hubbell, and you see that wherever President Clinton walks, carnage is left behind. It's amazing.
Well, now the Republicans have Dennis Hastert, and it does seem to be, as you pointed out, a very different kind of Republican leadership. Sounds like you don't entirely approve.
Oh, it's fine. Look, the country has normally not had an electric, pyrotechnics, cinemascope, grand speaker, and part of Mr. Gingrich's mistake was to think that he could peg up with the president, so maybe they want someone who will be a mechanic and who will be, as Chris Cox said before leaving the race, Speaker of the entire House. So maybe what they want is an uncle.
Okay, well, with an uncle as Speaker, we'll be back to talk about the Senate in a moment.
This is a world only a few know well. A world of risk and uncertainty, where the roads can take you to success or prosperity, or sometimes to no place at all. This is the financial world. For decades, banks and investment firms of mountainous size have ruled the land. Yet high above the horizon, another mountain has risen. A mountain called First Union. With 16 million customers, the nation's 8th largest brokerage and 6th largest bank. For a new perspective of the financial world, come to the mountain called First Union. Or if you prefer, the mountain will come to you.
We ease life's pressures. We help bring people back to life. We take care of best friends. We're the people of Pfizer. We develop medicines that make the world a better place. We spend over $2 billion a year on research. That's why we believe we'll introduce more new medicines for more diseases than anyone else.
Television screen near you, something none of us has ever seen before. A trial in the United States Senate of a President of the United States. Bill Kristol, I heard you saying yesterday that your wife's grandmother is 100 years old, and even she has not seen a Senate trial of a president. This is going to be something really interesting to behold.
It is, and I continue to have the hope, I suppose it's maybe naive and stupid, as Henry Hyde said in a different context, that it will be a useful and actually edifying sight. It will not be, I think, a spectacle. There will be, I think, rather few witnesses. I think it can go in a matter of weeks, not months. And I think it is the appropriate way to bring closure to this. I really do believe this. If there is a deal cut by political insiders in Washington, I think you will have a large parts of the country not feeling that this is the appropriate way, that it has ended in the appropriate way. If they begin a trial and then there's in an appropriate constitutional way, it's at some point there are 51 senators who wish to, in a sense, enter a summary judgment. That I think might be reasonable, but I don't think short-circuiting the process would be appropriate.
The president called again yesterday for this kind of deal. He said he was open to it. He thought it was appropriate. He would accept it and all of that. And I know there are people out there, former Senator George Mitchell may be one of those who was the majority leader who's going to try to broker it. But I agree that it's probably not going to happen. I think this train has left the
but I
station.
think we shouldn't confuse issues. There can be a deal and a trial, and that's most likely what will happen. I mean, the trial will start, and then afterwards, the senators will come together for some sort of censure, and perhaps maybe even Senator Robert Dole will join Senator Mitchell.
But how do you do that,
together.
George? I mean, do you take testimony and then you say, well, we don't think the testimony rises to a level of, it's like a judge saying,
sure.
you haven't even...
Yeah, absolutely. There's moves for summary judgment in trials all the time.
But the testimony suggests he lied under oath. I mean, how do you dispose of that?
They can say they don't think it's impeachable.
George.
They can say that. You're right.
I think this is apt to be, as Bill says, a stately process, not least because the senators will be muzzled.
I can't wait to see that, I must admit.
Until they get to the point where they actually try to write a censure resolution, and then you're going to see real bitterness. Because the president, again, put down a marker yesterday. He has not moved in 11 months. He said, I have done nothing wrong in my official capacity. That means when they move to censure, if they do it on the president's terms, it is all about sex.
Well, but if he accepts the censure resolution, then I guess it would be over. And I don't know what he would do then, because yesterday at the White House was strange. The president was impeached by the House. Whether it was partisan or not, it was a very solemn, awful moment. Did he hide under his bed? Did he send word that, you know, he was just upset? No. They came out with a pep rally. They clapped. They cheered.
And the people...
And after that, he had a Christmas party with friends, supporters, and Democratic Party donors.
And the people applauding him were the authors of the censure resolution that they floated, saying he has dishonored his office, and they clapped.
Well, it's like he won a medal or a prize. I've been impeached now. Hello, here I am again, doing the people's business.
Is it Bill Clinton in the war room again? Is that what we were seeing yesterday?
Well, he's going to have to be. And I think that, again, he was just a half a tick off. You had to show unity. The Democrats had to come back and support their president. But there was a bit of a triumphal air, which was inappropriate. He could have come out, made his statement, walked back in, and it was kind of the pep rally atmosphere that was wrong. I think it's a little tough to blame the guy for wanting to be with friends that night, Sam. It was a difficult,
I'm not blaming him for wanting to be with
day.
friends, but this was just like business as usual, George.
This is what I'm worried about, though, Koki. I think you hit on it. I think that in this writing of the censure resolution, the White House and the Democrats might not fully appreciate what happened and may go too far. And then if they can't write it, he will go purely for this acquittal, fight it all the way to the death.
And I think you see what you're seeing, and I agree, partisanship works both ways. Both parties have been partisan. But because of the partisanship and because the Democrats believe that that is the way they can win, and so far it's worked for them, I don't see any kind of deal that everybody can agree to being made. Look what the first act was of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, was to not name managers to go to the Senate. Now, normally what happens in an impeachment trial is the House of Representatives, as a unity, acts as the prosecutors because it's the institution of the House that has impeached. The Democrats in the House are essentially saying we have disassociated ourselves from the institution. We think that it's acted in an illegitimate fashion, and we will not even participate in this trial.
To try to make the country think that there was a coup, which is just one step away from a military takeover, is a great disservice to the country. The president should go to trial and win it. He should be acquitted if that's in fact what the evidence and the facts show.
The Senate Democrats are going to want to censure him, and I think that's the difference from the House.
That the Senate Democrats are much more serious about it.
Another thing to bear in mind, there's almost no reservoir of affection for the president, least of all in the Democratic Party, because there are senior Democrats who are not running again and who remember this as the party of Hubert Humphrey and Mike Mansfield, as Stuart Symington and Paul Douglas. and who resent very much that world's oldest and by many measures greatest political party is now exemplified
George,
by
he should not
Frank
be
and
thrown
Turpin.
out of office because there's no affection for him. He should only be thrown out of office if the
Depends
facts
on
and the
why
evidence
there's
All right,
no
we will
demonstrate
continue this
that he's a
argument
criminal.
into the new year. And Sam and I will be back in a moment.
Impeachment. Watch World News Sunday with Carol Simpson.
And ABC's coverage continues on Good Morning America with Lisa McCree and Cynthia McFadden. Their guest will be Senator Orrin Hatch. That's Good Morning America, first thing Monday morning. And that's all for this Sunday. Until next week.